Sports Professor Rick Horrow into the $1.3 trillion business of sports, and you're on the record with a special Olympic podcast. It has been a busy 2 weeks, and for me, a busy week. 3 billion television watchers, 350,000 TV hours, 35 venues, 20,000 journalists, 45,000 volunteers, and a net economic impact of over 11 billion euros. Parisians sure been busy. And for 6 days, 9 events, 9 venues, I was part of it. From the Champs-Élysées and the view of the Arc de Triomphe to the Eiffel Tower and everything in between, I had the ability to cover many events that are familiar to all of us. Gymnastics and Simone Biles' gold, swimming, Katie Ledecky's record-setting performances, sportsmanship that people couldn't understand in normal team sports, but I could. The Eiffel Tower and an incredible, almost dead heat 100 at Stade de France, and again, everything in between. What an incredible series of events. So a special On the Record podcast, the best of in 13 individual segments from my beginning to my end. Here it is now. Sports Professor Rick Horowitz on the $1.3 trillion business of sports. Special Olympic specials all the way through the next week and a half or so. And the beginning is the numbers. About 15.3 million tourists expected to be here during the Olympiad and the Paralympics. About 5.5 million French coming to Paris. Obviously, the 3 major airports at overload. They've had 15 successful dry runs, security, logistics as well. 115,000 bags. Hopefully they don't lose them. And obviously, it's not just the bags. How about the javelins and the canoes and the kayaks? We don't bring them, but if an Olympic athlete doesn't have it, it's death to him as far as competition is concerned. Bottom line is Paris is ready in all material contexts. From an incredible opening ceremony, most of these athletes leave 24 hours after the closing ceremony or before, ready for the onslaught. 20,000 media and VIPs as well add to the mix. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute. More Olympic updates follow. Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports. Special Olympic edition number 2. Well, I wasn't going to do anything about transportation, but this is something you couldn't pass up. You know, gridlock getting to Olympics, G7, an Uber Lyft type company solves that problem. They've been in existence for 50 years or more. Europe's largest transportation taxi company, employing 15,000 people. But get this, they have a deal with the city of Paris where they can use the streets that Olympic officials and police and fire and other important people can use to get to venues. I am going now to the North Paris Arena for boxing. We'll talk about that later. And an hour and 10-minute trip by normal transportation, not the subway, it doesn't go that far out, will take about 30 minutes. So my driver says, yeah, he says 30 minutes. We'll have to see. We're halfway through it. The bottom line is, when 1896, when the Olympics started again, this company was there driving deals. No, not then, but certainly now. It's a new slant on transportation, another convenient aspect of these games. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute, Special Olympic Edition. Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports. Your Sports News Minute. The boxing venue, North Paris Arena. And a little issue about completing the transit line here, but transportation not a problem at all. By the way, about 50% women, 50% men as far as participation in all of the events, and boxing is exactly the same. If you look at the card today, 8 women's events, 2 men's events. And the bottom line of all of this is that it's not just a special event here, but guess where the finals are for these? At Roland Garros, which is amazing when you think about it. So the finals of this event will be held at the Tennis Center. Boxing, diversity, Olympics, all the same. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute, Special Olympic Edition. Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports. Special Olympics Sports Report. How about this view? Yeah, the Eiffel Tower right behind. By the way, built in 1887 for the 1889 World's Fair. It's been iconic and a tourist attraction ever since. But now, beach volleyball. It was a demo sport in 92, Barcelona, 96 in Atlanta. First time it was played. In Jones Beach, kind of comment on not having a lot of sand in Atlanta. They're very successful. Bondi Beach in 2000, Australia, it took off. Became the fastest growing sport in the world, and it continues to be similar to that. Numbers rivaled only by pickleball and badminton. We talked about that earlier. By the way, it's growing by leaps and bounds. How do we know that? Industry reports say net sales are expected a 7% compound annual growth rate, at least through 2031. 7 companies. That's how we know. We also know because we love to watch it. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute, Special Olympic Edition. Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports. Olympic report. Number 5, the swimming venue, La Défense Arena. It's an example of the Parisian frugality. You know, Beijing spent $39 billion on infrastructure for their games. Sochi about $50 billion, still costing Russians about $1 billion a year, they say. Paris, about $8.5 billion, but $4 billion of that is infrastructure. But because of the TV rights fees and the revenues, they're going to make a lot of it back. And one of the reasons is buildings like this. It's a concert hall, 15,000 people, and Taylor Swift's last concert was here on May 12th. They cleared this place out, was going to have gymnastics here, realized they couldn't put it here, scrambled to get a pool in here, and the rest is history. A great swimming venue and a concert hall. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Special Olympic Update, Sports News Minute. Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports. Day 6 of the Olympic Games. Roland Garros Stadium, another example of using a facility that has many other uses for Olympic events. The tennis finals, semifinals, all the early matches. By the way, the facility named after a French aviator who crossed the ocean in the late 1800s and became a hero. Bottom line is, and great history here, it was a detainee camp at the beginning of World War II. It's now the head of the French Federation, a whole bunch of tennis development here. And also, by the way, interestingly, the final rounds of the Olympic boxing match held here at the beginning of the weekend. The overall perspective is tennis, boxing, other uses. The French have their act together relative to efficiency of facilities. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute, Special Olympic Edition. Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports. Special Olympic Sports News Minute. Champs-Élysées, Arc de Triomphe, right behind me as you can see. The hotels to the left, to the right, they've increased their prices anywhere from 200 to 500%, but that's to be expected at any mega event. 45,000 security people, game safe so far. Some say isolated vandalism at the beginning of the games and in the next step, but the bottom line is we're mostly through the games and no major incidents, although it's clearly day to day. And the other issue is everybody is excited about the ability to hold the games for the world. The opening ceremonies up 60% over all of the last ones, and it continues to go forward. No matter who wins gold, silver, or bronze, Paris is clearly the winner. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute, Special Olympic Edition. Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports, Special Olympic Edition, Arena Balsi, gymnastics. Bottom line is this is the house that Simone Biles basically built. And that's what you're thinking about long term. Because at the end of the day, it's endorsement dollars. She's not getting as many endorsement dollars as some other people, but the top 25 Olympians are earning $35 million in the 1 month to 5 month run up around the Olympics and $1.35 billion total cumulatively for them. Who are they? Well, Djokovic, obviously, and Alcaraz on the tennis side. Durant, the Greek freak, Curry, and LeBron on the basketball side. We know that's mainstream. How about the top earner of all? How about Jon Rahm, the golfer? $300 to $600 million. Thank you, Live Tour. At the end of the day, Simone Biles, maybe the greatest female athlete ever, is in this package, and she wins her goals right here. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute, Special Olympic Edition. Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports. Your Special Olympic Sports News Minute. Arena La Chapelle. Oh, wait. It's the Adidas Arena. It's what it is. Look behind me. The arena and logo covered up like all of the sponsorship names for all of the venues all over Paris. And the bottom line is that's the way it's going to be. Look at LA 4 years from now. See some of the same stuff probably impacting SoFi, Intuit, all of the stadiums. But look what's played here. The badminton Olympic event here, 220 million people. It's the second most popular sport in the world, just behind soccer. And by the way, it's been a demonstration sport in 1972. 20 years later, it made it official in Barcelona. They've never looked back. Pickleball, move over. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute. Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports. Your Sports News Minute. Stade de France, the anchor of all of the Olympic facilities here in France and in Paris. Built in 1998, the French victory over Brazil in the World Cup. It's been a staple ever since. Where track and field, which is a showcase of the games themselves, including the 100-yard meter dash tonight. Television ratings a bonanza, and why not? In Squaw Valley for the Olympics, the NBC group and others paid just about $25,000 to $50,000 for the games. Today, the games, $12 billion through 2032. And the bottom line is they get their money's worth. When you think of the 10,000 hours of programming and the streaming, these are the streaming Olympics, over 3.05 billion unique viewers, plus the horses behind us. And the bottom line is the games get bigger, the television gets bigger. Enjoy closing ceremonies here as well. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute, Special Olympic Edition. Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports, and you're on the record, a Special Olympic Edition of the Sports News Minute. We're here at the Palais des Versailles. More mirrors than anywhere in the world, 357. They also signed all the significant peace treaties relative to Parisians in the war years ago, but that's not it. Look at this tremendous complex for dressage and jumping, the finals and semifinals for jumping. By the way, the only set of sports that the men and the women athletes compete in the same event. And clearly it is a major event, having watched some of this. 80 horses in a day one jump off to get to 30 in the finals for the jumping. It is one of the premier tickets the entire Olympics, and the entire equine and horse industry revolves around this event in a venue that was never made for this. An example, just like beach volleyball under the Eiffel Tower, the ingenuity of the Parisians. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute, the equestrian event. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports, your Special Olympic Edition. We've covered 9 venues, 9 facilities, 9 special dramatic sports and moments. As we return home to the United States, a couple of issues. First of all, the dramatic excitement, emotion, passion, pride of the French people can't go unnoticed. It's a tremendous success, more than halfway through the games, crossing our fingers, but it looks good. Second, from a financial perspective, the IOC generates probably 60% of the revenues through media, and the top sponsors, another 30%. They think they're going to make about $8 billion, 10% off the top, about $1.7 billion to the local organizing committee. The others to generate excitement on a regional basis. They certainly should have those revenues from everybody, not only because of the weather, but because of the excitement and efficiency of the operation, because there's no significant debt attached to the facilities, and on and on. We'll recap later on after the games are over, but right now, a significant grade A heading back home. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute, Special Olympic Edition. Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports with your final, at least in Paris, Special Olympic report number 14. Get ready to go home. And the bottom line of the two-thirds of the event so far is a $3 billion rights fee. NBC, check. The incredible events and the innovation of them, including equestrian at Versailles and beach volleyball under the Eiffel Tower, check. Weather started off badly for Parisians at the opening, but the international audience up 60% regardless of the rain. Check. The security, 45,000 security folks, check. How about some of the major storylines? Simone Biles, the incredible sportsmanship, some of the allegations of transgender. We'll have to work all that through. But the bottom line of this is a record-setting Olympics in many ways, and we're only two-thirds of the way there. Can't wait to get back. Sports Professor Rick Horrow, Sports News Minute, special final, at least in Paris, Olympic edition.